Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Aquarius. For now, I realise that I'm late getting the readings out, but I myself am under some considerable load right now, and so I made the decision that what I would do is show up with some shorter videos that I can manage a little bit more structured than we usually look at, rather than not showing up at all, because that was the alternative. So to that end, bearing in mind that the times we're in and what's going on, I thought it would be more useful at this point to check in with where we actually are. Not where we think we are, but where we actually are. As some of you may no doubt be aware, Neptune has newly moved into Aries, and so he's quite active at the moment, and Neptune brings a kind of distortion to whatever he touches. Saturn is finishing up his story in Pisces and is about to move into Aries too, perfecting that conjunction at 0 degrees Aries on the 20th of February. Now, although they're not there yet, they are strictly conjunct, even though they're in two different signs. It's just that conjunction is getting closer and closer and closer. So we have the planet of reality, karma on this plane, the edges of things, all that sort of stuff, in Pisces, where he doesn't really enjoy being, getting ready to move into Aries, where he also doesn't really enjoy being, and all the while being sort of shrouded by the fog of Neptune. Now, to that end, I don't think there's a use case, really, in orienting people towards what comes next. I don't think that there is, because I don't think anybody really does know what comes next. The only thing that we can do is remain with that which is within our own control. So the next step forward is all you really need to be concerned with. Is there solid ground for you underneath your foot to put your foot down on? Yes, then you can go that way. Anything else, I just don't think is helpful. So, we've also got a big story starting for you in your sign with that solar eclipse that's happening on the 17th of February. And to my mind, I really do feel like that's what's going to pull the starting pistol on the craziness of this year, she says as she looks out of the window, and all of a sudden, for no fucking reason, it has just started snowing. Okay. So, I hope that that's acceptable to you. It's what I've got. It's what I can give you, so this is what I'm doing. So, let me flip the camera around here. What we're going to do first is pull 3 cards to see where you are right now, right? According to the tarot, what is your position? From there, we will ask how best to move through the uncertainty of the moment. I've already given you an indication to how I think it needs to go, but we'll get some specific information for you on that. And then 3, I thought an interesting question to ask would be, what story is now finished? Because we're talking a lot about new cycles starting and, exciting new things like this, but there is no beginning without an ending. And sometimes it's difficult to really take a hold of the new beginning with both hands when we're still trying to maintain some level of the old that is actually trying to fade out, really. So getting a sense of what story is finished, what narrative maybe is finished, what set of circumstances is finished, can be, I think, quite useful, because then we know as that instability starts to set in, we can step back and say, that's okay, that one's going. So let's start with where you are right now. We have sideways, 4 of Cups on its side. We have the Page, no we don't, we have the Knight of Pentacles, beg your pardon. And we have the 3 of Swords reversed. That's lovely. I really like that for you, Aquarius. And I particularly like it for you because this year's been difficult this last year, so this last 12-month period. It's had you tapping into emotional stuff that seems to have bubbled up from nowhere, and getting through that has been really, really difficult. I don't doubt that for a second, and not a bit disorienting, really, Aquarius. There's one way that you've interacted and interfaced with the world, and now suddenly it's changed by nature of the fact that there's a lot more of you to release out there now, or to process, or to sit with, so on and so forth, than there ever was before. And that feels, that's not a comfortable ride. And yet here you are, I think, getting to a point of almost graduation. So, how to move through the uncertainty. Let's have a look at that one. We've got another reversal. It is Knight of Cups reversed. We've got the Queen of Swords in the upright. There's Aquarians everywhere sighing with relief. Right. And we've got the Chariot. Oh, I love this. I really love this for you. Let me get the other 3 cards out, and then we'll dig into what this means. So, what story is finished for Aquarius now, please? Ace of Cups. Oh, goodness me. We have the Wheel of Fortune and the Seven of Swords showing up here. And we have the Six of Wands, the Nine of Pentacles as at the bottom of the deck. Now, so just as an overview of what's happening here, I think it's really important to point out that what I'm seeing is that, as I said, you can heave a sigh of relief, because this intense emotional work, whether it has been for you processing trauma, kind of bringing stuff up to the surface that you didn't even know was there and having to deal with that, or whether it's been coming in by way of emotional situations that you just seem to have been, running into for the last 12 months, it's completed. It's done. And more than that, you seem to be graduating with a bit of a gold star, actually, Aquarius. And in 2026, that's no mean feat. Like, as I look around the world, and it seems to me that almost everyone in some way or another is losing their fucking marbles. God, those snowflakes are big. I don't know, like that. Who? To be even moderately in control of one's faculties is quite the achievement. But when you look around the table here, particularly this Nine of Pentacles, it feels like this last year has been a really intensive shadow period for you, right? Where shadowy themes, shadowy things have really, tapped on your psyche and said, hi, I want to be brought in from the cold, please. Because the Nine of Pentacles for me is all about resource management. We're not talking about your money. I'm not talking about how many zeros are on the right hand side of the decimal point in your bank account. I'm not talking about the things that you own and your assets, although we could be including those too as well. For me, pentacles represent value, and they represent that which we have to invest, right? So it's both the thing that is worthy of investing in, and it is the thing that you have to invest in the first place. So for example, time, care, effort, money, love, energy, all those would count as pentacles for me. But by the same token, if we take all of that into account, a Nine of Pentacles showing up in the upright says, you have all of the resources now in your hand where you can access them. If we have a very dense, undealt with shadow, then we are missing a fundamental part of our toolkit, right? We just are. If you are, I'm not going to get too deep into the shadow here, because quite literally I've got classes on Circle that I have spent hours and hours working through all this kind of stuff. So I'm not going to repeat that here. But it's a kind of integrated state where we have access to far more of our resources than we had before. And your emotions, as much as they have been disorienting and discombobulating, they actually form part of the toolkit. We've talked about the importance of the magician actually having access to the Ace of Wands, right? Not the Ace of Wands, the Ace of Cups. Because otherwise he's only working with 75% of the materials available, which means he can only output 75% of what he's trying to bring to bear, right? But there's also the question of how we grow and how we develop in and of ourselves. Because it has to be holistic and it has to be right across the board. If you've ever met anybody whose chart is really heavily weighted one way or another, right? So maybe they have everything in water, it when you meet them, because everything about them is watery. What we're looking for is a balance where everything is held beautifully in alignment, so that as the situation requires it, we can lean into whatever is best suited to deal with that situation in the moment, with no processing of emotions having happened before, or minimal compared to what's been going on for the last year. You have been working without that really essential part of your toolkit. But I mean, right here, I mean, let's look at this. This Knight of Pentacles is about discipline. It's about commitment. It's about really knuckling down to work that needs to be done. It represents the sign of Virgo, actually, and the South Node is there, so there's quite a lot of work that's going on in the Virgo sectors of everybody's charts at the moment. But that notwithstanding, the energetic presentation of this particular night is not really very fast, not really very sexy, certainly not infinity. It's all very much down here groundwork, right? And that's not really a comfortable place for Aquarians to be, right? Your natural mystics, your natural outsiders. You know, there's a certain amount of pushing emotion to one side that makes more space for more of the swordy like things and the more of the stretching up and all that kind of thing, right? But we're trying to make a holistic, well-balanced human being here, and so this work was always necessary. I love the fact that the Three of Swords has showed up in the reverse, because although to my mind, at least in the first instance, it never really made any sense as to why this was a swords card, right? That is a uniquely emotional response. We all know what it feels like when you've got a sword running through your heart, metaphorically speaking, I hope, not actually, right? It made no sense whatsoever. Like, why wouldn't this be some sort of cups depiction? And I realized over time that it had actually little to do with emotions and emotional states. It was the introduction of the cold hard steel of truth into some sort of emotional comfort zone, effectively popping that comfort zone. And whilst distressing to experience in the moment, the end result of it is that we are working to a higher level. We're vibrating at a higher level of truth. Obviously, the next card on from this is the Four of Swords, where we withdraw and we almost like recalibrate what we think the world is about off the back of the new information that we've received, right? But for me, when it shows up in the reverse like that, what we've got is gravity actually doing its job, time to some extent doing its job, because the force of gravity is pulling these swords out. A heart cannot heal really very well around steel, right? You know, that steel's moving around and not, it's just cutting all the scar tissue. When gravity, when time, when maybe even Saturn, right, does its job and allows those swords to fall out slowly, what we've got is a slow healing process that happens around the space where the swords used to be. Now, when you put these two cards together here, we're talking about someone who's recognized actually what is happening and the necessity of working with it rather than pretending it's not there, right? Somebody who has worked long, slow, hard enough for now there to be some kind of result that is coming from it. Now, are you entirely healed? Well, no, of course not. Do we ever get to a point where we are entirely healed? I don't think so. Four of Cups is on its side here. In the reverse, for me, it's a state of gratitude. Like this, we've got things like abandonment issues, rejection, sensitivity. We've got, kind of pushing away others, being used to being an outsider, right? It's effectively neutralized when it appears like that, because it's neither one way or the other. Maybe it hasn't committed to going one way or the other, but it feels like a part of you has opened up to a different way of seeing things, different way of feeling things, maybe even just allowing yourself to feel things at all, possibly. And noticing things like, although, being the outsider is something that you've become proud of, right? You don't do things the way that everybody else does them. There's an underlying wound in there somewhere that never really quite got over it. And I feel like this is part of what's been healing now. And you see, showing up without the wound being in the process of healing, means that to some extent, what might have come across as a rather contrarian way of living life, right, now has a bit of authority to it. Because it's almost like you've recognized what's been missing in yourself, and you've pulled a lot of your resources back to yourself. 9 of Pentacles. So when you take an alternative view, understanding the importance of what you have discovered about yourself and where the wounding is and whatnot, and allowing that to heal, it's like you have the capacity to get in with the crowd. Remember that whole thing about Leo and Aquarius seemingly kind of swapping roles for a little bit? Really weird. But I wonder if that had something to do with it, right? Understanding the value of a community around you, understanding the value of a support network, right? And not necessarily just disregarding everything because a number of people feel it to be so. It actually gives you more credibility when you do pull away from the herd and go, no, that's not right. No, that's not it. There's a different way of looking at this. Because people recognize that you're taking in the full spectrum of the elements now. And taking in the full spectrum of experience. Does this make sense? And that you're also leaning into something that is deeply emotional within you too, and bringing this to bear. It is now informing your worldview. It is now informing the decisions that you make. It's now informing your perspective. But it's not coming from a place of wounding. It's actually coming from a place of healing, which I think is really fascinating. When it comes to moving through the uncertainty, I'm kind of pleased to report to you, like, that uncertainty is not emotional in nature moving forward. And I really like that. I really do like that. Why do I say that, right? Because the Knight of Cups is in reverse. It's not always a good card when he shows up in reverse. But in your case, I'm going to give it to you because we've got a story that is finished up in Pisces. Saturn's finished in Pisces, Neptune's finished in Pisces. North Node is still there, but, very soon it's going to be finished in Pisces. And where is it moving? It's moving into Aquarius, right? So we've got a tying up of these old stories in Pisces, which is the sign next to you, right? I always think there's a little bit of abrasion with signs that are that close. It's like almost like siblings, you know what I mean? We're kind of very, very different, Pisces and Aquarius. There are ways in which they can certainly find common ground, but friction. Anyway, so we've got a number of stories that are finishing up there, and the energy of Aries, I think, is much more it's much more in alignment with Aquarius, full stop, actually, even if it's down to the experience of the outsider, but from sort of different perspectives. Aquarius is often about turning your back on the mass, on a group of people, and saying, "No, I'm not going to go along with that just because the whole crowd is." Certainly don't want to be in the middle of that. Where Aries is just like, attention has been caught by something over there. That's it. I'm off. Right. In both instances, there's a sort of almost like an isolation, a little bit. A really strong sense of self. And Pisces, it's that crossing point that Aquarius has to get over to get to Aries. There's a lot that can change in the middle of all of that swirling water. Anywho, what we're not seeing is the need for you to keep plodding forwards with this kind of level of emotional intensity, right? That's not what it is moving forwards. The Knight of Cups, work done. He's off out of the picture now, to all intents and purposes, apart from the North Node, right? But we've got the Queen of Swords here, and I really like the fact that the Queen of Swords here. Why? Because she helps you make sense of what you think. It feels to me that it's far more likely to have the Queen, far more useful to have the Queen of Swords here than the King, which would usually be your card, because the King is about the active decision making process, right? It's what you say, it's what you think to people, certainly when that is expressed outwards. And it's the decisions that you make. It's very action oriented. Here, the Queen is the passive, subjective quality of air. It's saying, what's it about? What does it mean? Is it true? These kinds of things. There's a great assimilation process that happens when the Queen of Swords is around, because she's verifying all of this information. And when I'm talking about information, I'm like talking about how you feel, your worldview, your perspective, all these things that have changed in the last 12 months. And she's trying to find a way to synthesize it into something that's logical and makes sense. And she's doing that with your emotions and everything that they have uncovered as much as anything else. But the emphasis has shifted away from the feeling into the making sense of it now, which is the right order for it to go, actually. So props for that. But I would worry that you were sort of charging forwards a little too fast if the king was there rather than the queen, because the queen's still putting things together. The queen recognises that there's a lot of information here, and it probably will take a canny bit of time to synthesize. We're not ready to make decisions about anything yet. There's a kind of restraint there, where you're almost allowing yourself a period of time to make sense of even just discovering what has changed about yourself in this last 12 months. And particularly, in the face of everything that's about to change quite rapidly. Now, the final card that we've got here about moving through uncertainty, it could not be more beautiful in terms of it being the Chariot. Now, yes, the Chariot talks about decisive, bold movement forwards and victory and success and determination and all those kind of things. But at the core of the Chariot is the notion that the key to any kind of successful forward motion is the balancing of polarities and the knowing of thyself. And what has happened in the last 12 months, despite the fact that it's been very uncomfortable and you probably haven't enjoyed the ride very much, you have brought in parts of yourself that you have either cast out or you didn't know were there, however it might be, whether it's been through shadow work or whether it's been through, getting unexpectedly ambushed by your own emotions, which, let's face it, that's gross, and it does happen at times, right? Kind of allowing yourself to sit with those, allowing yourself to know about those, allowing yourself to integrate whatever wisdom they may present to you. It's giving yourself that other 25% of what was missing before. The Chariot is always about the balancing of polarities here. For me, it is actually a card that speaks specifically to shadow work. I don't think many other readers see it that way, but for me, we've got the polarities represented by the two animals that are pulling the Chariot, but ultimately we have a conscious mind that is holding these in balance, holding these in alignment. And this is what we do when shadow things are concerned. And it is that balance that allows for control and allows for steering the Chariot in the direction that we want to go. Like, those are the preconditions for success. Anything else is neither here nor there. So in terms of navigating the uncertainty, we have a know thyself kind of indication going on here, but we've also got the restraint of going, I am still getting to know myself. I am still synthesizing this information. I'm still passing it. I'm still trying to work out what it all means. I'm not ready to put this together in a plan or put this together into a set of decisions yet. But I don't think those set of decisions are too far away. I mean, to all intents and purposes, what this all actually may be speaking to is just getting to know yourself with a handful of pentacles instead of 3/4 of the number of pentacles which you currently have. I'm like, what does it feel like? What does it mean? What is this extra stuff that I get to invest now? What are these extra set of things that I now find valuable that I didn't before? It's that kind of orientation, kind of like, how does it feel to be in my body now, So we move into those final set of cards, like, what story is finished? Well, first and foremost, the story that has you having to knuckle down to your relationship with yourself. The Ace of Cups for me is it's like the spiritual telephone This is how we talk to the universe, God, source, creator, your higher self, your guides, whatever your terminology is for it. This Ace of Cups is an openness to receiving information, but it's also by way, because it indicates the way that you treat yourself and how you hold yourself, or, the kind of esteem that you have. It is you setting the bar for how you want to be treated, but it's you communicating to the universe through acts of demonstration, through how you think, through how you feel, that you kind of got the memo and you recognize that you're taking yourself up to the next level. It's like, that is done for now. Doesn't mean that it's done forever, because the work is never done, and there will be a point at some point, and I don't know when that will be, when you will be called on to go through that same level of thing again. But it's never quite as bad the second time that you go through it, I think, because you know that it'll end, right? You know that it's going somewhere, and that's probably good. And even though it feels like arse in the moment, when you get there, you're like, actually, on balance, I'm kind of glad that that happened. I'm kind of glad that I got to know that bit of myself a little bit more than I did before. So it's done for now, and we can move on from that. But these two cards here are really fascinating, because the Wheel of Fortune's been showing up quite a lot for people. And this feels to me a little bit like a loss of control. It feels a little bit like Jesus took the wheel from you to I'm using shorthand there. I don't think Jesus actually wrestled your steering wheel away from you, right? But that to some extent, forces greater than you took over driving your life for just a little bit. And it was gross and you didn't like it very much. Fixed signs, to some extent or another, all struggle with issues of control. Because, quite simply, we're here to hold everything in place. There is a controlling element to that. It's very important. We wouldn't be able to do our job as fixed signs if we didn't do that. But there's a way to do it that is healthy and balanced, and there's a way to do it that is not. And I think the way that power got ripped away from you this year, or the control in steering your car, I quite honestly think it was kind of intimidating for a little while there. That Seven of Swords is about strategy and about planning. Sometimes it's about dishonesty and all these kinds of things, right? But it's got a quality of really ripping the band-aid off. So maybe showing you where you tried to control things a little bit too much. That's for sure. But certainly relieving you of any misapprehensions that you might be labouring under, that you had all your shit in order. Right? That Wheel of Fortune, when it starts to spin, it's fucking rapid, as my partner would say. Like, it's really, really fast, and it will not be contained. It's really, really big. And in terms of showing you what you did not see, showing you what you did not know, mayhap. And like I said, it probably felt a little bit disorienting for a little bit there. But it's done. And I like the fact that the Six of Wands is here. Because I think there's a very narrow version of success that you were working to that you did not realise was narrow. And I think the way that your mind has changed, the way that we have more elements on the table now, and the perspective's changed and healing has happened, and there's an integrated version of you that's shown up that feels very different to who you were before. I think that there's something rather interesting that's happened around your idea of success and what it means for you to be successful in something, or even the way that you approach success. I can't help but feel it's the idea of success itself. Like, there's something here about projection. Like, from your mind, projected from your mind, the perfect version of you was just you with a few little tweaks here and there. It's almost like beaming out of your head and kind of like Star Wars style, just like this big on the top. Well, yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. But then a lot of the last 12 months has shown you where some of that has been untrue, some of it has been falsehood, some of it has been an expression of trauma, some of it's been an expression of things that were repressed. Some of it's been an expression of just because you ignore your feelings, it doesn't mean that they're not there, doesn't mean that they're not, working their way through you. Ignoring is not the same as mastery, right? And I think maybe aspects of all of these things have started to come up for you. And the notion of what successful, a good person, a proper person actually is, has changed somewhat. There's something considerably more accepting about you as it relates to you now than there was a year ago. And quite honestly, you didn't think there was a problem a year ago. But as it started building up and it started coming through, I think it's just shown you where you didn't have the emotional tools to deal with what you were feeling, right? Where repression or constriction or, that kind of, let's just get it out of the way. Repression, oppression, whatever. It's not the same as actually being good enough to do the thing, to work out how to balance all of that energies. And this last year has taught you how to do that. And something very subtle has changed. Like I said, I feel like you accept yourself a lot more cleanly now than you did before. And that's warts and all, flaws and all. And not the intellectual appreciation of them, but actually like the emotional consequences, the emotional ramification of accepting that about yourself. I think you're there. It's really interesting. Each of the signs I'm doing these readings for, they're in quite a good place. And that gives me a lot of hope. These cycles that are ending, we'll ignore the cycles that are starting for a moment, but the cycles that are ending. And it isn't just Saturn and Neptune, and we've got Uranus finishing up in Taurus. End of April, we've got Jupiter's going to finish moving through Cancer. July sometime, we've got a nodal shift happening in July as well. Like these next few months, there's a lot of stories that are ending. Which means this synthesis of what the fuck it's all meant. The integration of the lesson into self. It's all landing at exactly the right time. This is wonderful. So I'm going to go to the extended now. If you would like to join me, you are very welcome to do so. You can do that on Self-I or Circle. The links for both are in the description box below. If nobody said it to you today, I am very proud of you, Aquarius. This is awesome. This is really, really good. So I have nothing more to say. You're bossing this. So know that I love you all very, very much. And I'll see you soon.